you want the truth? Are you tired of being so confused? You feel like you're more f***ed up than the lies on the evening news? Well, just step right in. We can talk about it all as friends. And if you want, we can hug and kiss and make up for the party ends. Agree or disagree, stop bothering me. 'Cause I'm everything you want.
Seeing if Rumble works. I don't know. Rumble was having some issues this morning. Yeah, they're all saying ended. It looks like Rumble is down. Good morning, everybody. What's going on? I hope everybody's doing well for another. I guess you can call it a surprise show. Just up early. And I think it hit 4:51. Rolled over and the clock said, "Wake up." Not sure why. As you know, I have participated in a standing desk. And to be honest with you, standing for 12 hours, no big deal when I was in retail. Would do it constantly. But not having done it in 3 years, I'm not going to lie to you, it was a little punishing on the old hips. So I woke up a little sore this morning and a little bit slower than usual, I guess, would be the proper term. Hope everybody's doing well. Late show last night went fairly well. And this morning's topics really are not anything much different than what we were talking about last night. By the way, if you have not liked the stream, please do that. That helps. I know everyone tells you to do that, and you guys always forget. So I'm here to remind you, just give a like to the stream. It gets the word out, and especially when we come on do these impromptu shows. Taking a look at who's in the house. Kevin's in the house. Good morning, Kevin. Whoa. That almost cut my head off. Let's put that over there. Good morning, Kevo. Kevin had a chance to read the DUM News article in regards to Donald Trump and the Bibles and had some opinions on that. It's always nice when people leave their comments. Michelle, good morning. Well, not everybody, but it is fairly nice. Lee, what is going on with you? Good, sir. BK, good morning. Have it your way right away this morning. Morning, Lolly. Matt, Santana, Norma, Renee is here. Good. Hello, Renee. How are you? Chris. Every time I see Chris's name, I want to say Chris Pratt, but I guess it's Pruitt would be the name. Top of the morning to you, lass. Hello, Amy. A spot of green beer. Good morning. My son has that shirt. He loves it. He should. It's a great shirt. I shared this post to both the groups. Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, Chris. Good morning, Tommy. All right. So I've been perusing the Facebook page, and Facebook's been going absolutely bonkers, batshit. It's going off right now. It's all day long. And it's been a while since this has happened. And usually with events like this, it kind of gets, a little busy and people come in and newcomers and whatever. And, people have something to say. I want to talk about, besides the fact that we've got 1,000 followers in less than 22 hours, I want to talk about expertise. And it's an interesting concept to assume that unless you have experiential learning, Rumble was up and it stopped. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with it. It's acting weird. I tried to get it going, but it wouldn't let me. I'll try one more time because I can do it because it's broadcasting. It's just not picking it up. Rumble, it's not going to look pretty, but I'll go back in and edit it and post. Let me try to get it. I love my Rumble, people. So I wonder if I could use Rumble Studio. Huh. Here, let's use template. and we'll just do DUM morning live. Okay. And we'll leave everything else as is because she's fickle this morning. All right, let's go right now. Hit next. Boom, boom. Hit submit. Let's see what we get. And what I'll probably do is just leave that there because it's obviously working. It's just not on my terminal end telling me that it is. So somebody let me know. I just plugged it in. We'll see if it works. So, Chris, if you wouldn't mind checking for me, that would, without Olivia here, it makes a big difference. All right. So expertise. So there's kind of an adage that people believe that you need to be whatever, that you need to be an expert in something before you can attempt it. And I'm under the firm belief that that is absolute bullshit. Anal retentiveness is killing me this morning. Okay. That you have to be an expert in order to attempt it. And this is the furthest thing from the truth. Is I remember being employed in Houston and us walking into an axe throwing establishment. And one of the first ever. Now they're all over the place, but this was in Houston, and this guy decided to open up an axe throwing place. You would lease axes for the hour like you would bowling balls, and you would throw axes after some slight training, and you had no reason to do so. I can't even imagine the insurance rates for that place. And he was charging a modest $15, $20 an hour for this experiential learning on how to throw axes. And not something that most people would find entertaining. However, my boss liked to go out and shoot and liked to go paintball and liked to do bungee jumping and stuff like that. And we were all directors and we all made good money. So therefore, our field days were a little bit different than most people's, where it's like, go get some pizza and some bowling. We decided to go bungee jumping or go and fire fully automatic weapons or go on extravagant adventures that just normally people wouldn't do. And today was axe throwing. And the thing that always happened as a ripe old age of 45 years old is not the youngest in the bunch, but certainly probably the most physically fit out of everybody. And David was built like The Rock. He looked like The Rock too. If I showed you The Rock with hair, he's a handsome guy, Samoan and black, and just like The Rock. He looked just like him. And but he was more, smaller, refined. And he was fairly athletic, but still, I was definitely the most physically fit out of the group, hands down. And this is out of 10 people. But it didn't matter what we did, whether it was bocce ball or paintball or going and throwing blades or arrows, or it didn't matter. I always won. And that wasn't always the case with me. In fact, it never was the case when I was younger. I was always last and everything. I was always picked last and everything. I was never good at anything. I was 5'2" and 225, 30 some odd pounds of fat, bulbous white mass. And what I learned was, yes, opening day, go Stros, go Avs for longer, but Stros after. Yes. I'm wearing my Stros, and it's opening day, I know. So anyway, we go into this axe place, and David's like, have you ever done this before? And I said, throw axes? I said, no, never. And he's like, do any of us stand a chance? And I said, yeah, I've never done it before. I don't know. He's like, have you thrown knives? You said you never threw knives before, but you threw knives just fine when we went and threw knives. I said, no, I've never. I did that before. He's like, so you've never thrown axes? I said, no. He's like, ever. I'm like, for the love of God, dude, I've never thrown axes before. What's funny is I was wearing a grunt style shirt that had a bullseye on it and it said on target. And it was like dead tap 10 ring. It's kind of fortuitous. So, the first girl gets up and throws the axe and, on the ground and doesn't even hit the target. And next person throws it up and it hits the chain link fence above and then comes down. And, just repeatedly, people are just mucking this throw. And David gets up. And he throws it and he hits target outside a ring and it sticks. And everyone's like, oh, woo, yeah. And then Susie, who always was my competition, just an amazing lady, just badass. Loved her. So tough. And short hair, this tall, total, pretty much a conservative, but just trucker conservative, just badass. And she gets up and she throws it and she sticks it. And like she hits 7 ring or something. And ooh, everyone's like, ooh, and I get up and most people after their 5th, 6th, 10th, 12th shot, they start sticking it. So it's my shot and David goes up and goes, watch this. And I hear him say it and I throw it, dead ring, right in the middle. Never done it before in my life. And then David goes, motherfucker. I mean, in the middle of this entire establishment where it's all, people out for corporate events and stuff like that. And he just drops up an F-bomb. This is a very polished human being. And I turn around, I'm like, what's wrong with you? And he's like, dude, of course. He's like, do it again. Watch, do it again. Pull it out and throw it and dead center. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm just throwing the damn thing and it's somehow going in. It made sense to me. It made sense. The amount of force and my release point versus the tumble. I don't know. It made sense. It's like firing a weapon. It's the same thing. It just made sense. But what I will tell you is that I have no earthly idea what I was doing. And he's like, give me the tips and tricks. I'm like, I can't give you the tips and tricks. I don't know what to tell you. Another story, fast forward, is my boss calls me and he's like, Matt, he's like, I'm going out and I'm going to be doing some trap shooting. I said, okay. I said, what are you using? Over, under, and blah, blah, blah. And I got it from my dad. It's like a $3,000 rig. And I said, I wouldn't practice on that. I would get yourself a weapon that's going to jam. I'd get you a weapon that is not as accurate. I'd give you a weapon that's not well built and learn on crap. That way, when you fire excellence, you understand the difference. And he's like, okay, well, I'll just grab this shotgun that they're going to have at the club. And I said, great, that's probably a good idea. Then you could start, because if you start rocking a $3,000 rig and you're like Maggie's drawers all damn day and you're missing those pigeons, you're going to embarrass yourself, bro. That's like the guy that goes out with a $3,000 fishing rod, and goes out with, Warwick and freaking high-end Orvis gear and gets skunked. You don't want to do that. So, oh, are you new here? Who's new here? Oh, what are people saying? What is this guy talking about? Oh, I'm intrigued. Why has the algorithm brought you up in my feeds? Because I'm watching you, Yvonne. That's why. So anyway, we'll get into that. So I get to this point where he calls me and he's like, Matt, we've had 20 clays and I haven't hit one and I'm so fucking embarrassed. I said, Brian, you're overthinking this process. Do you see down the barrel? Yeah. I said, how clear is it to you? And he's like, it's crystal clear. I said, stop closing your fucking eye. What do you mean? I'm not closing my eye. I said, yes, you are. If it's clear and it's perfectly clear, you're looking at it wrong. Stop closing your eye. You need depth perception when you're shooting clays. You need depth perception when you're shooting anything. But you're closing your eye. You're doing the movie thing. Stop. The next thing. Do you know what an inch is? He goes, yes. And I said, make an inch with your fingers. And he's like, okay. I said, I want you to lead the target by an inch when you're firing. Huh? When you stop squinting and closing your eye and you can see your iron sights, I want you to put that 1 inch in front of your target. He's like, what if it's going away from me? Then don't. So if it's straight, I just hit it right where it's at. I said slightly above. If it's going left, 1 inch in front. If it's going right, 1 inch in front. You got it? He said, yes. And the last thing I want you to do. He goes, yeah? I want you to stop thinking about hitting it, and I want you to think about nothing else other than just creating a smooth pattern from when you have a routine. So if you're going to put both barrels on target, you're going to eject, you're going to grab 2 new shells, you're going to load both barrels, you're going to snap and click, you're going to be ready to go, and then you're going to go back on target, and you're smooth. And the way you do it, I want you to practice the process of reloading, re-engaging the target, and anticipating not where the target is, but where the target's going to be. Do you understand? He goes, yeah. He went back, he hit 20 for 20. He calls up, you're a fucking wizard. How did you do that? I said, I have no idea. I just assumed that you were making mistakes that most people make, and they were overcomplicating it. And all I needed to do was to distract you and have you do some things that ultimately put you in the column of success, and that you would get fortunate and hit 1 or 2, and then your confidence would bloom. He's like, that's exactly what happened. I hit 1, and I hit 2, and I hit 3. I said, yeah, that's what happens when you hit 20 in a row. I said, congrats. Now go clean the table and destroy everybody. And that's what he did. Experiential learning is not necessary for success. It's not. In fact, most people fall into success by accident. And that's where the old saying goes, was it by accident or by design? And I like to be the design type of guy. Like when I launched Don't Unfriend Me, it was the best I could possibly make it at the time, which basically means it was warmed up dog shit. That's the truth. The camera sucked. It was black and white. The background was horrible. My mic was just god awful. You could hardly hear me. This is when I sound like, folks, I wanted to go ahead and talk to you today, and I want to. It was horrible, horrible. Now I've got the Benelli, right? I've got the shotgun of shotguns. But then, I had like a Remington cake model. It was just trash. Not that Remington's trash. I'm just, cut me some slack here. So my point is that this isn't a motivational speech to get you to, I can go accomplish anything. What I'm leading into is people's expectations of experts. Experts aren't even necessarily experts, because the thing about experiential learning is that it's never over. Every single person needs to understand is that there's always somebody out there who knows more. So what I've learned to do is to understand that I know nothing. And it's my job to go educate myself on a various amount of topics so I can selectively choose what I want to know something about. Now, those 2 stories are there for experiential learning. Now, let me teach you something about being self-aware when it comes to the news and what's been going on in the world, and how the things that I cover, I win on because I don't do a few things. Here are the basics. One is I don't talk about what I don't understand. Not what I know, what I don't understand. My daughter comes to me every single day and she goes, Daddy, can you help me with algebra? I said, not a fucking chance. No. I can give you all the theorem. I can give you the understanding. I could probably do geometry. I might even go into a little calculus. But I struggled with basic math. I went into algebra and it was a bloodbath, literally. It was horrible. I failed pre-algebra. I stopped college with a 4.24 when I had to take algebra. I got a D. And I went to Mrs. Raboyne, who was my cheerleading coach, because I was the only guy in the school who was built, who could spot the cheerleaders. No joke, it's a bunch of cowboys, a bunch of small bull riders. Eastern Wyoming College, bumfuck USA. I was the giant, and they had a basketball team, and I was like the fifth biggest guy on the campus. It was like Joel, Warren, a black kid named Clyde, and me were the tallest kids. They even asked me, you want to play basketball? I'm like, no, I don't know anything about basketball. I'm horrible at basketball. So I became a cheerleader. True fucking story. Pardon the language. True story. So I spotted Eastern Wyoming College. I was horrendous. God, I was horrible. I was like, listen, I get to have my hand up a keister all day? I'm down. I sucked at it. It's horrible. So embarrassing. Wearing those freaking polyester crap. Ugh. It's horrendous. And nobody thought I was gay, trust me, because everyone knew my reputation at the school, but that's not important. The point is, I went to Mr. Raboyne and I said, listen, I got a 4.23. I'm on the debate team. I'm on the student council. I'm popular. I got parties every day. I'm an older guy, so everyone looks up to me. I've been in the military. I've been to 26 different countries. I was in intelligence. I had 3 C schools. I was number 1 in my A school. I was honor man at boot camp. I was meritoriously advanced twice. I've seen and done things. I've been to Washington, D.C. I've been to New York City. I've briefed people all over the world. And I can't figure out algebra. You got to help me. She says, I can't help you. You're stupid at math. You're just dumb as dog shit when it comes to math. I said, I don't accept that. I am a highly intelligent human being. I can figure I was dumb most of my life. I failed high school. I've transcended. I've eclipsed. I should be able to circumnavigate and negotiate with this obstacle. If I can go through and work with team guys and do the routines that they do for exercise and working out, I can do this. I can do algebra. She said, no, you can't. You're stupid with math. You're never going to be okay. You're never going to get it. Matt, you're exceptionally bright. You're one of the most gifted people I've seen to be able to read, to write, to articulate, problem solving, deductive, logical reasoning. It doesn't matter whether it's philosophy. It doesn't matter whether you're in political science. It doesn't matter whether you were in biology. You can't do algebra. You can't do math. You don't have the basics, and I can't teach it to you. I can't teach it to you. I can't give you what you need because you don't have the basic rudimentary skills in algebra, and I was not going to take that. So I took my D and I said, bullshit, I'll figure this out. She goes, okay. Came back next quarter and I had to have an F, an incomplete, because I was going to get an F. And she's like, either I drop you and you go ahead and take that. But if you go one day past this date, you're going to have that on your card. So you're going to have to either drop it and retake it and go and take rudimentary introduction to algebra, or you're screwed. Lo and behold, I never went back. I had a kid out of wedlock, and my college days were over. And it's probably a good thing, because I learned a few things about myself, is that college is not necessary. So, the whole point, just because you don't have a degree in something, it doesn't mean you can't be an expert in a subject, okay? But you also need to understand your limitations. You need to know what you're not good at. Once you uncover that, you understand how to use your strengths to leverage your weaknesses. Does that make sense? Good. By the way, thank you for all the people following the show. The second thing, outside of knowing your limitations, is having a different way to look at things. Now, the way my mind works is I can take in multiple sources of data and information, and I can process it simultaneously. I can listen to multiple conversations at the same time. It's a very unique gift. I can sit in a restaurant and I can listen to 5 different tables at the same time, and I can tell you all what they were talking about. Do I listen to them at the same time? No, that would be multitasking, and that is an impossibility. You can't do that. When people say, can you go ahead and walk and chew gum at the same time? Yeah. Can you rub your stomach and pat your head at the same time? Yes, you can. But are you sending independent signals simultaneously to your hand and then the pat at the same time? Yes, you are. You're not independently telling your hand and your hands to do that in different ways and then just walking away from it and it continues. You're having to concentrate at some level and tell them to work independently of each other. There's no such thing as multitasking. It's a lie. It's bullshit. There's nothing, no way. People are like, you need to learn how to multitask. You know what? No. You need to lower your expectations of what the human mind is capable of. You cannot work on 2 things at the same time. If I could, I would, because I've tried to master it and it's impossible. But you can multi-switch. You can work on multiple things at once. So when I say I can listen to 5 conversations at a time, it's not simultaneously, it's listening and listening and listening and listening and listening, and then cyclically going around the room and piecing it all together. That's not simultaneously. It's not at the same time. However, it's working towards one goal independently of each other to get to the same result. That's multi-switching. So you need to learn how to multi-switch. You need to learn how to take multiple bits of information, compile it, and then make a overall presentation of the facts. This is extremely important in what we're doing when we're out there listening and consuming information. Let me give you some examples. You're on one podcast, and all of a sudden this podcast goes, this ship crashed into the bridge, and all of a sudden, at the very last minute, that captain steered right into it. And now, what happens? 10,000 little brainless automatons. He stirred into it, 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 he stirred into it. Okay. Then another podcast goes, at the very last second, the ship veered off, unbeknownst to anyone why, into the column. 10,000 heads go out. They didn't know, 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 they didn't know. It's a chorus of conjecture. Then you have another podcast that says they dropped anchor, they had no propulsion, they were carrying in a high current, moving at 8 knots, 150,000 tons of mass. And that anchor impeded, along with the normal movement of being a dead stick in the water, moved that vessel to a port spin into that pillar. It was an accident. It was an accident. It was an accident. Accident. Okay. Then another podcast goes, he's from Ukraine. And everyone's like, Vladimir Zelensky did it. It was Zelensky. It's a false flag. It's a money laundering. It's a money scheme to raise more money for Ukraine. It's Zelensky's way of telling us that he's unhappy with the amount of money that he's getting. Okay? Then you got another podcast that goes, I spoke to somebody and they're an intelligence professional and they are all flipping out and said it was a cyber hack. Cyber hack. Okay, now you've got 7 different stories with the little monkeys running around, going across the internet and espousing different stories. And then you have something that comes around known as tribalism. Okay? Tribalism is when people go, my podcast is right. Your podcast is wrong. You better listen to Matt Spear because he knows his shit. You better listen to Glenn Beck because they know their shit. You better listen to Laura Logan because she believes that illegals are coming up and drinking the blood of children. And I believe the same thing. Therefore, she's right. She believes in Jewish space lasers and Zionistic lasers that are burning down the world and derailing trains. Therefore, I believe that, so she's right. How do I know this? It's 3 years of experiential learning because I see it and I hear it daily. I know the narrative before you even wake up in the morning. I know the day's news before you even crack eye or release morning wood. And the reason why is because I have a channel where it all goes to. I've got millions of people who come on and decide to all over my page and tell me what the morning narrative is. And then I get a chance to go ahead and disprove that before you even wake up. This is how people get in the know. They don't have to be experts. All they have to do is listen to what people say and then find some semblance that disproves that theory. This thing has been going off 75 since we've been on. We're at 188,575. We're going to hit 189,000 today. This keeps up. We're going to hit 200,000 by the end of the week. People are tuning in. Why is this important? Why, Matt, why this morning? Why are we talking about this? What does this mean? This is for you, damn it. I'm trying to get you to understand is I want you, if you would be so kind, if you're going to be my tribal monkeys, if you're going to be the tribal dummies, and a shirt is on the way, tribalism, the dummy tribe, the dumb tribe, somebody figure it out. You guys name the dummies. You can figure this out. It is because if you're going to leave this podcast and go and tell the world, I would rather have you stop telling the world, and I would rather have you ask questions. I don't tell people much anymore. Maybe on the show, maybe on live, but in my articles, I don't direct you on what to think. I tell you the facts. And you can go read every one of my articles, and none of them are editorial. None of them are opinion-based to change the viewer. They give the facts, they lay them out in a concise and clear way. Hi, Stacy. So everyone could understand. And then the reader gets to choose their own adventure or interpretation of what's written. And that is why the news site is successful, because it's not prescribed bullshit. It's not built for the left or the right or the center. It's built for somebody who is looking to just get what happened. With no other rhyme or reason, with no hidden innuendos, with no supposition and conjecture, just fact. That's the way my shows are designed. That's the way the writing's designed. And people don't like it. Some do. Some do. A lot don't. Do you know how many people are pissed off at that video that is now at 72,000? What is it? The live video that I did yesterday. That thing blew it is single-handedly my #1 video in 2 years. I can't even get my videos to gain traction. This video's crushing. And do you want to know why? Because people want to disagree with it. You know what they say? What do you know? You're not an expert. What's different than what you're saying and everyone else is saying? Oh, like you have hidden confidential sources. So you were in the Navy. What does that make you? What? So you understand shipping, you understand large container vessels, you understand engines, you understand You understand how ports work. You understand how tugboats work. You're not an expert. What do you know? Why are you saying that my theory is impossible? Why are you trying to disprove what I think? I'm not doing any of those things. And honestly, just to be transparent, I don't care what you think, because what you think is immaterial. Because I don't deliver thought. I don't deliver prescription. I deliver what the facts are. And although those facts may change, because new information will come out of the fog of war, I'm only going to give you what I know. Not what I think, what I know. And what I know is how vessels work. I understand how combustion engines work. I understand how auxiliary and secondary and primary power work. The reason why is because I have experiential learning. I have the ability to research and look up things, but more importantly, I know how to ask the right questions and ask the people who do know, who can teach me. So when we say, you're not an expert, I don't have to be. I have to understand how to ask the experts the right questions. I have to get on the phone at 4:32 at 04:30 and call friends who are on scene. I have to call a sheriff here who will then call a buddy in highway patrol, who will calls a buddy in Port Authority, or calls a buddy who's on harbor police, who then will pick up and call me. Hey, I got a friend. It's a buddy. Can you answer a few questions for him? He's got some stuff. No, I don't have time. Sweet. Can I ask you a couple of things for him? Sure. I sit and have breakfast with a guy who's on NTSB. I have a guy who works in the State Department. I have a guy behind a guy. But what I don't do is say, hey, my guy said. That's what I don't do. What I do is I ask questions. Where's our current state of readiness right now, man? Are we calling back military forces? Are we putting a stand down in place along the eastern and western seaboard and down in the Gulf with shipping lanes? Are we stopping any foreign vessels from coming in? No, not at this time. Okay. What's our readiness level? I know we don't use the color code system. Where are we at? Are we at a heightened state? I can't answer that. Okay. But what you're saying is that at this point, all vessels and vehicles are allowed into and domestically into international and U.S. waters. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. I got my answer. So there's not a terrorist threat. I don't have to be an expert to know that. I don't have to work for DHS to know that, because I was just told by the State Department, because they can at least share that with me. So now I know that there is no terrorist alert level because we have not stopped the amount of vessels coming into the United States. So let me ask you a question. Even if it's a cover up, even if the government wants to do it, why wouldn't they heighten the alert? Wouldn't that add more to the control? Wouldn't that add more to the allure of all of this? Wouldn't that create more dissension and distrust with our government that they're not telling us something to leak out that we're at a heightened state of alert for our country? Well, of course that would assist. Why wouldn't they? Well, because we're not there. This wasn't a terrorist attack. This wasn't a cyber hack. Fort Meade has had absolutely no increase in activity or traffic load. The thing that they've been focused on right now are the 14 Chinese fucking hackers that have been wreaking havoc on air traffic controls all over the world. That's what they're focused on right now. Wait a second, how do you know that? How do you? Because I read. Because it's right there if you just go out and look for it. And then when you get that article, you call your buddy who's a Marine, who works at Fort Meade, who spent time there in the Army and in the Marine Corps. And you ask him a question. Dude, how things going? Everything's good. Are we green, man? Yeah, but everything's copacetic, man. We're 5x5. Cool. Increased workload? Anything you can talk about? Nope. Everything's good. Okay, are you lying to me right now? Matt, I've known you for 15 years. Why would I lie to you? Okay. All right, thanks, buddy. See ya. Then you go ahead and you find out that 2 reserve groups have been moved out of reserve duty into an active status. And they're relocating personnel into Fort Meade. Wait a second now. Now I've got conflicting information. I've got buddies out of Texas who are being relocated, who are coming into Fort Meade, and I've got intelligence analysts that are being activated. What's going on? Something's up. I better start looking into it. I better start researching. I better start finding out what's going on because people are going to ask me the question. Because if you remember, that happened, 45 days ago? So is that independent of what's happening with this vessel? Yes. Are they related? No. But is it an opportune person for somebody who wants to make money or want to get some clicks or wants you to go ahead and subscribe to their fucking beef box? To go ahead and say, did you guys know that reserve units, ISs, Marine Corps intelligence, Army intelligence, reservists were put on active duty and they're sending them overseas? Did you know this? And the ship hits that bridge? Do you think they're related? Dun, dun, dun. Come on. It's so easy to tie sinew together. It's so easy to lump masses of shit together and go ahead and make a shit-filled sandwich, but that doesn't mean that it's accurate. Let me give you another example. I'm going to put it for you right now. Here it is. The vessel hits the bridge. The bridge goes down. All of a sudden, people look at train derailments. People look at ag and food processing plants that are going up in flames. Does that mean that derailments have increased? Does that mean that ag and food production facilities has increased? Yeah, they have. We talked about this last night, about 12%. 12%. Could we correlate that to a lack of jobs? The amount of people who had to be laid off in these areas? The blue-collar workers who do the preventive maintenance, who check to make sure the oil's right, the gas mixture's right, that there's not combustible materials near these areas, that these trains are being inspected properly, that the brakes are being inspected properly, that these engineers are doing walkthroughs on their trains because they're not double, triple stacked because they don't have the personnel to run the amount of locomotives that they usually do. Are these possibilities because of government shutdown and COVID that are a natural progression? Were there train derailments before? Were there fires before? Were ships crashing before? And the answer is unequivocally yes, 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 and yes. But because we've extenuated it, because there's this under narrative that the government is trying to have population control and globalism's taking over and the New World Order and the UN all want to take over the United States and they're going to invade us, we assign these things that have nothing to do with each other and say, and here's the end all be all, the duct tape of fucking conspiracy. Got to prop this up. Nothing is coincidence. Oh, Lord. Yes, that's why it's called coincidence. Now, am I naive to think? No, here's the other one. Your controlled opposition. Okay, fuck you. All right? I'm struggling to pay my fucking mortgage right now. If I was controlled opposition, I would not have any need to do this fucking show, okay? I would be on a beach somewhere collecting dividend. Give me a break. My I-9 and my IRS documents are all available for you to see right on my page and right on Facebook. You can go in and see how much money I've taken, how much money I spend on advertising, and who bankrolls me. And do you want to know who bankrolls me? The USSS Spear. Me. Everything you see, from my set to my cameras to my mics to all of this stuff. And I know it's nice. Trust me, I paid for it. I'm aware. I'm the one that put 50 grand into this shit. So when I get, this guy's controlled opposition, he's a Fed. Oh, give me a fucking break. You guys are worse than the people that go, you're a Biden supporter. Have you even been to my page? A Biden supporter? A liberal? Me? My God. How desperate have you become? It's so easy to discredit people when you don't trust anyone. I understand your trepidation about our government. I worked for them. I know. Am I saying that we are pure as driven snow, that we are just molasses on top of blueberry pancakes? No, this government has done a lot of weird and evil shit. But you give the government too much credit. Let me give you an example. Okay? Let me just try to paint this picture for you. I do this with a stolen election, and it really cuts into the heart of it. Let's do this, okay? In this one example, you have 6 guys who are working on the bridge, dead. I think 2 of them survived, 4 of them survived. Total of 8. I think 4 of them survived, and then they announced what? 2 dead? 4 dead? I don't remember. I'm too fucking tired. It's been a long week. Somebody educate me. You've got 2 guys working, or girls, working both sides of the easy pass and the tolls on each opposite end of the bridge. Those things are manned 24 hours a day in case there's a problem. The gate goes down, whatever. So they have automated gates, but if there's an issue, they've got people watching those. You've got the crew of the ship. You've got the captain. You've got the harbor master. You've got the pilot. You've got the tugboats. You've got the engineers of those boats. You have the dock workers. You have the other vessels and the other ships. So let's just go and say, right with all there, you've got 300 eyewitnesses. 300. Just 300. I know it's more than that. If you have been down on those docks, you would understand that. But now you have all the cameras. You have the recording devices. You have the people watching that. You have overhead tasks that are watching that. You have independent drones who are watching the ships for security that are going ahead and passing throughout the harbor, especially at night. You now have the passerbys on the trucks. You have the passerbys in the vehicles. Now the 300 turns to 3,000. Then you have the people in Washington who have to correlate this thing, who have to put it together, who have to create an op. If you haven't went outside and liked the feed, do it, please. It helps the site grow. We're at 90. I believe we should always be over 100. If we got 100 people watching, we should be at 100 likes. Or hate it. So now you're in a situation where you've got 3,000 eyes on this thing. You've got people in Washington who have to communicate. You've got to do the hack. You've got to go ahead and pass out orders. You've got to have budget. You've had to test this thing, right? Because that's really where the rubber meets the road. You have to have a ship, a vessel, that is susceptible to this type of hacking. You then have to expertly calculate the overall speed of the water, the volume of the boat, the buoyancy of the boat, the drag of the boat, the anticipation of the captain, the anticipation of the people in the engine room. You have to have anticipation of an anchor being dropped, both anchors being dropped, port side anchor being dropped, starboard side anchor being dropped. You have to go ahead and even take the atmospheric pressure. You have to take the dew point, the visibility, the wind speed. You have to take the amount of how many knots this vessel is going, how many it will be going, all remotely, all from a visual standpoint that you don't possess because you have hacked the software. You then have to practice this somehow. In a computer simulation, maybe? Okay, fine. Say you've done it 1,000,000 times in a computer simulation and you're an expert. You've played Nintendo and you know how to crash this thing. In all that unpredictability, you nail it on the first time. You hack this boat and you crash it, unbeknownst to the 3,000 eyewitnesses, the cameras, the nav data, the ENAV data, the EGPS data, the black box, the Mayday call, the police officers responding, the saving of lives, non-daytime, in a non-trafficked environment where it's literally bumper to bumper on that fucking bridge between the hours of 6:30 and 9 a.m. and 4:30 all the way to 7, where you could have killed thousands. And you nailed it the first time. Where thousands upon thousands of ships have gone through there over the last 50 years without an issue, without problem, even during stormy weather, with 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds, with containers that are not light, that are pushing that thing through the dredge left and right, and they're able to compensate. This is not Dutch Harbor, Alaska. They are not going through the Bering Straits. This is a freaking river / cove / inlet / harbor. They went through it guided with tugs. They were miles from the harbor. They were on the last leg of going through the FSC bridge, and then literally a little right-hand turn around a man-made island, which has Civil War history that someone taught me about today, and then they're heading south out to sea, and they predominantly take the current and ride. Is it possible that instead of all of that bullshit, that the captain lost power once? Bad fuel mixture? Maybe. Engine just crapped out, threw ahead? I don't know. Electrical went out? I don't know. But we saw it. We have evidence. We have video evidence of the vessel losing power one. We then see the engine kick back on and a huge black cloud of smoke. We see power two. Is it possible that any of you in your experiential learning have put a very small toy boat in the water before? Has anyone done it? I know I have. Every one of you have. Every one of you have. No, they don't guide them when they're 1.5 miles to 2 miles out of the harbor. They're out of the harbor. They're under free power. Look at the map. It is nowhere near. They were already in the inlet. They were already in the channel. Tugboats don't take them out to sea, y'all. Tugboats they move the moorings. They release any type of attachment to the harbor that they have, to the docks, release from the cleats, remove the moorings. At that point, they have small separation. They have a tug come in and literally push fore and aft, 1 to 2 tugs, to slowly bumper them off the dock. The engine's not even on at this point. They move that vessel from the docks, and then both, 1 or 2, push the vessel sideways to a lane. Get them on the path. Get them into the channel, into the inlet, into a place where that vehicle, that vessel, can rotate its propellers in a safe, freestanding way without any obstructions or any fear of getting caught up on the bottom. Once that tug has it there, captain signs off that he is under power. Pilot is taking care of that, who is a master of communicating on the radio and ready to hit throttle or ready to do anything they need to do to assist those tugs to save that vessel, because that's what the insurance requires. And once they're where they need to go, that harbor master leaves the vessel, gets on the tug, and bye-bye. And then they go. Not when they are on the docks. Engines are not throttling and are not revving when they are moored and on the docks, Mel. That is absolutely ridiculous. You're telling me that the engines are engaged when they're moored and cleated? No. Never seen a vessel in my life that's moored and cleated have its engines turned over. I've never seen that. Once they are removed from the docks, They turn on engines and then go into a neutral position. They have no throttle forward or backward at that point. Never seen it in my life. Every LCC, every carrier, every destroyer, every frigate, every cruiser, never seen it in my life. Hell, even a sub. I've seen a lot of tugs move subs off without underpower. So I completely disagree with you. I don't know how the Canadian fucking Navy does it, but I've never seen it that way. Tell me I'm wrong. Okay, so there we go. Thank you. So once you are removed from the dock, you will have your engine started and you will be in a neutral position until you are in the path, until you are in the channel, the inlet, and you have a line to proceed forward and it is safe to do so. Harbor Master is still on the boat at this time. Pilot is still on the boat at this time. That happens long before that vessel gets to that bridge. Long before. And listen to what I said. And at any point that tug needs assistance from that vessel to slowly push forward or back, reverse engines or move forward, give it throttle, they have that option. But most of the time under tug, that vessel does very little to assist initial removal from the docks and being put into the inlet and to go. There is very little assistance from the actual ship itself. That is in a prime condition. And that tug doesn't sit there and push it all the way out to sea. It gives its initial move for a safe exfil from being moored to being sea fit and ready, and then allows that vessel to do what that vessel does, which is to circumnavigate and go where it needs to go. So when a lot of people are like, well, why didn't they tug it through that bridge? First of all, you're creating more complexity. Second of all, you need power in that stage. That vessel needs to be moving at a certain speed. The whole reason why that damn thing wasn't able to steer, and it wasn't steerage that caused the problem. From what I'm hearing is that it was a propulsion issue. And if you are a vessel which is going down current, and there was a very fast current moving through that channel, was carrying that vessel, when you lose proportion, you are at the mercy of the river, as they call it, even though it doesn't look like a river. When you don't have propulsion, steerage doesn't work. That's not the way it works. The propulsion going through the rudder creates that motion. And if not, it's like a wet, sloshy stick. It's a wet log. It's non-responsive. Now, I asked you a question. When you have a toy boat and you drop it in a river, little toy boat with a little sail on it, what happens? What happens? It goes in the water, and you imagine this, whitewater rafting extravaganza where the nose points straight down and that little boat just goes over all the water and you're like, yeah, kick ass at the bottom. Does that happen? No, that's not what happens. What usually happens is that boat flops over, but let's say it doesn't. Let's say it doesn't have a sail and it's just a straight boat where a lot of it's underwater and you just have the top side of the boat and you put it in the water. What happens? What happens when you put it in a bathtub? Nothing. It stays there, right? Okay. When you put it in a pool where there may be a little bit of wind, what happens? Just kind of goes like this, right? When you put it in a current, what happens? It either goes starboard or it goes port, and it slowly rotates and spins. And the reason why is that the propulsion of the water moving the boat is controlling the entire mass of the boat. The energy is not coming out of the backside pushing it forward. It's coming all around the boat. It is a very different momentum. The momentum is not being created by the propeller, which then goes through the rudder, which then allows you to steer the ship. It's the actual current moving the entire boat, and the current and the swell and the spinning is all predicated upon the path of least resistance that that object, which is being propelled down the water, goes. So that's why when you put in a little boat in the river, you see it and automatically it either goes left or right, and then it's sideways. And you're like, son of a bitch, boat. My son's coming in. He's going to go to practice. Are you going to practice? Where are you going?
William's house.
Okay. Bye, bud. Put on your shoes, okay?
Bye, Dad.
What type of socks are you wearing? Mike, we have to talk about your dress. Whatever. So that's why when you're a little kid and you put the plastic boat in the river, every single time it never goes straight. It just turns to the side or it turns left or right. And when you put a motorboat inside of a pool that's under RC control, you go ahead and spin the propellers, and the first thing that happens is it starts doing this. It kind of cattails, then it straightens out. The same theory takes place for a larger size ship. It is at the mercy of the water. The volume that that ship displaces means very little once you are under current. Water works differently than natural forces like air or things to that effect. You know this because it literally takes like 1.5 inches to 2 inches of water to sweep a man off of his feet. We learned this in Hurricane Harvey. We would see things like semi-trucks be picked up in 4 or 5 inches of water. Water is an extremely powerful thing, and it's unpredictable. It's unstable. When you look at water, you see it moving and you think it's just somehow beautiful and serene. But when you put your waders on and you get in there and fly fish, like I did for years in Colorado and Utah, on the Green River and on the Blue River and on Deckers, Colorado, I know the difference between fast-moving water and slow-moving water, and you may not be able to tell the difference, but there is a very large difference when that river is high and it's moving fast. And if you get in there, you're gone. And I don't mean gone, I mean gone. The sea, the river, the flow of water is an extremely dangerous thing. I know how it works because I grew up surfing on the coast of California. I grew up on boogie boards, longboards, and regular surfboards. I swam with some of the coolest motherfuckers in the world in the military. I was cold and wet for a shit ton of my career. And I understand naval vessels because I have been on naval vessels. Does that mean I'm an expert? To some I am, to some I'm not. But I will tell you the basics of what took place, just assuming that they lost hydraulics, they did not have power, and then when they dropped anchor, what happens when you drop an anchor port side? What happens when you drop starboard side? Think about it. Think about the math. If you drop an anchor on this side, you're going to get pulled to this side. And that's exactly what we saw. When I said dropping anchor would be useless, it was useless. And honestly, what it looks like is that dropping that anchor did make the course correction right into the pier. I think you're probably going to find, or into the pylon, what you're probably going to find is that that anchor did more harm than good. And I think anybody who watches that understands it. A boat spins at the mercy of the flow. That's correct. A ship under power is very different than a ship being powered by the water. It's not the same thing. And just because it's huge doesn't mean that the physics don't apply. Just because it's big doesn't mean that the physics don't apply. I have seen a fucking aircraft carrier put its aft end sideways in less than 20 seconds by waves. And that thing displaces more water than the frickin' Empire State Building. That vehicle is the size of a building. That vessel is massive. 100,000 tons without anything on it, and can take another 95,000 tons in weight. And it was running empty. So let's assume it's half. So it's running 150,000 tons at 8 knots. Do you understand the potential energy from that? People are talking about dolphins in the front of the water, right? Not like Not that. Talking about dolphins, these blocks that they put in front, kind of like bollards in front of Target. You know those big red balls? So F-150 doesn't come and run through the store and snatch and grab? And they're also talking about putting around the pylons these very large barricades that work like gravel pits in California for people who go over the grapevine and lose control of their semis. They're off-ramps that go up. And they go from 0 to like 125, 130 feet. And they do a gradual incline. And inside that ramp is nothing but soft gravel and eventually sand. So when that truck is doing 95 and it's free bounding down and it's got no brakes and he's like, rubber ducky, I'm coming in hot. It simply just goes up that ramp and it slows it down and stops it because it uses gravity, it uses incline and resistance from the gravel and sand to seize the momentum of the vehicle. Ships don't have anything like that. When they're going, they're not going to stop. They don't have brakes. People are like, why didn't he reverse propulsion? Well, he didn't have propulsion. Otherwise, this wouldn't have fucking happened. And even if he did, it's still going to take at least a mile to stop. So just because you don't have the answer doesn't mean it's a conspiracy theory, right? You got to wait. So last night I'm like, hey, they're like, well, why didn't secondary power kick in? Secondary power did kick in. But like Mel and I told you, certain ships don't have secondary systems that do more than just reboot the nav system. Remember I said, and that's exactly what happened. They've released initial reports that when secondary power came on, they got nav systems, they got some running lights, they didn't get their front lights, their forecastle lights, their front forward lights, they got their sideboard lights, which Mel and I told you. And it got emergency lighting. And then you saw the engine fire back on with main power, and the whole boat lit up again, then went back down. Have you guys ever done that? Have you ever had a Christmas tree when you plug it in and like you're like, oh, Beth, it's the greatest tree we've ever had. I know, Bob. It's what the fuck just happened? I'll get it. It's a breaker. Then you flip it on, comes back on, and you're like, oh, but son of a bitch, what just took place? Boats have the same problem. There's so many things that can happen. I don't know what happened. All I know is that vessel lost power, was at the mercy of the currents. He was on a trajectory, on a line, because if you're telling me he turned, I want you to listen to me, folks, because this oh God, this is what drives me crazy. This drives me nuts. People are like, he wasn't on the line. He wasn't going to go through the bridge. He wasn't lined up correctly. He was way off. First of all, you're looking through a wide camera lens. I have a wide camera lens on this one right here. This is a 9mm, not a gun. This is a 9mm. The camera is a 9mm lens, which means it's ultra wide, which means it's got a fisheye. All those lenses you're seeing in those photos all have fisheye. So you're going to get refraction on the left and right sides. It's going to screw up your depth perception. That's why I did this last night, where I brought in the phone and I said, tell me which way it's pointing. What's my degree of angle here? Am I pointing at the flag? Am I pointing at the mast? Am I pointing off camera? Which way am I pointing? But when I go like this, I'm not turning it. I'm just rotating. Now I'm straight on. What if I told you it's pointing in the same spot? Would you believe me? No, you wouldn't, because your eye is telling you something that's different. Refraction happens. The lens is designed to be a fisheye. It's not a flat lens. And that way it can encompass and give you more view and angle. But that means things on the left and right side are going to be distorted. Haven't you ever seen objects in this mirror will be closer than they appear? Bullshit on your rear view and your side mirror. Those work in a wide angle aspect. Those are small little things. How do they see all the way to the right and all the way to the left in your bumper? How's that possible? It's the same theory. You get distortion. But either way, it doesn't matter. Let's say he wasn't online. He came in offline, right? He was aiming for the frickin' pylon, right? That's what you're telling me. He was dead center. He wasn't aimed at the middle. He aimed for the pylon the entire time. Then when it turned, why didn't it hit sideways? What? Matt, what did you say? I don't understand. Matt, you're talking gibberish. What? But stop it. What? What? If he was aimed offline to begin with and wasn't aimed dead center at the bridge, and you're telling me that the bridge target's over here and he's here, and on this side, this is the pylon, and he's going right for it. Well, then if he was going right for it, and then when he turned, if his nose was right on it to begin with, and then he turned, he would have hit it sideways. Is that what you're telling me? Because it was a 27-degree turn, roughly. It wasn't a 45, about a 27-degree turn. Why didn't he hit it sideways? Because he was dead center. And what you saw was something called drift. When he is out of power and no propulsion, he is at the mercy of the water. And that channel is going to push him to the path of least resistance. And where the most speed and the most energy from that water is coming is at the closest edge to the dredge, because it creates like a torpedo of speed. That water, that slow moving, that shallow water moves. And the deeper it gets, the faster it gets, because the initial pull of that center. That's why you'll see people walk on the edge of a lake or a river and everything's fine. Then all of a sudden they step too deep and they're gone. And when I say they're gone, they're gone. The deeper you go, the more speed that water is going to pick up on. And this boat is going to naturally drift left and right. And if you don't believe me, just go ahead and get your garden hose and run it downhill, just a little 7-degree hill, and put a little boat in it. And you tell me if that thing doesn't literally do this and doesn't do this. So he was dead center. And when he lost power, he made a slight adjustment when he came back in. But what you're not considering is the anchor drop. You're not considering what impact that had. Don't you remember when Joseph told me, Matt, drop anchor? And I said, I wouldn't drop anchor. One is it's not going to do any good slowing down the vessel, which it didn't. And two is it could ultimately, especially if you're not under propulsion, completely throw you off your heading. Because there will be a pull and a drag from that. And that drag is something, okay, this is where we get into physics, okay? And I don't want to lose anybody because I'm not a physicist. But I will tell you, when you take mass from outside and transfer that energy to the outside, where motion is taking place, and add that amount of mass, matter, and lack of speed and slowdown, you're going to get a drag. You're going to get a force that is going to counteract your current heading and your current movement. It's going to contradict what's taking place from the boat as a whole moving. And the best way I can describe it is what happens when you're in a parachute. Now, when you're in a parachute and somebody's taking a film of you and they're like, hi, Bob, go ahead and wave. And they're both going down and they're doing your parachuting. And then all of a sudden the guy pulls his cord or it pops automatically because he's got a sensor. And you see the guy go, Phew! And then the guy in the camera goes, Phew! So what happens? Do all of a sudden you go, whoosh, and you go straight up? No, it's not what happens. It's the guy who's videotaping is still in free fall. And you're slowing down. So it's not that you go up. It's that cameraman whoo, goes down. The same thing happens when you deploy a chute onto a back of a vehicle, like a NASCAR race car, or not a race car, but a funny car. And it's doing 175 miles an hour, and it's going, and then he pops that drag, and all of a sudden, it doesn't just go, okay, thanks, Bob, let's get out. No, it takes some time. But what do you see in that vehicle? You see this. That drag, ultimately, if it's not dead center, if you put it on the right side or the left side, that funny car would do this. Dead. So you put it dead center. This is why that's why you see a lot of high volume stuff. Like when they drop pallets of food or tanks from planes, you see 3 chutes. Why do you see 3 chutes? One is volume, one is for speed, but honestly for stability and control. Because if you put it in the middle and it doesn't deploy just right, you get the ones you saw in Israel that the volume, when you drop them, doesn't envelop in air and it gets into a free fall, turns into a tulip, and that's how I broke my back. So you put redundancies on there, but mainly it's for stability. Because what you get is natural tendency to spin. And anybody who's went down a propelling rope understands this. Anybody who's been on a line understands this. Anyone who's been on a helo and gets on a tow cable understands that you'll do this shit. The same thing is true with inertia and power. When you put drag onto something and it's not centered and it's not stabilized in the right area, it will create pull and it will have the opposite effect. Very similar to losing your back end in a snowstorm. So when you drop an anchor from the port or starboard side on one side, if you dropped it on both sides, that could have done something maybe. I don't know. But when you drop it on one side, I'm telling you, when that thing sticks, it's going to create drag, and that ship is going to do this. So people are like, how did it turn so fast if it didn't have steering? One is assisted by the rip current and the overall speed of the water. And the second is when they dropped anchor, you are going to have an effect doing that. So let's just sum this up, because we got too much shit to do. Either this is a giant conspiracy and a cyber hack from a foreign government, and all the people involved were all kept quiet once again, and nobody's going to leak it. And the government, who literally can't find its ass with 2 hands and balance the budget, is going to pull off another caper of the year. These super secret clandestine missions to fuck the American people. Or Occam's razor is in full effect. And when you remove all the improbable and probable, whatever remains, more than likely, is the truth. It was an accident. Now, could there be dereliction? Could there be malfeasance? Could there be poor choices that were made? Of course. And we're going to find that out in the investigation. But that just because you don't know doesn't mean that you get to make up bullshit. You don't get to make up that it was a giant conspiracy. You don't get to say it was a cyber hack because you don't know any of that. But what you do know is the basics of physics, the basics of hydraulic power and hydropower. You understand kinetic energy. You understand the opposites of those things. You understand the radio call. You understand, if you've been on a boat, how they work and how fickle they are in the water when they're dead to power. You can put 2 and 2 together. You can also take the thousands upon thousands of vessels that have gone through that area multiple times a day, multiple times a week, multiple times a month and year, thousands upon thousands of times with no issue. That on the long enough timeline of probability, no matter how improbable it may be, it will happen. Whatever it is that you're thinking about, time cures everything. That is unfortunately the way it works. You might go ahead and throw an anvil up 10,000 times, and 10,000 times it'll come down, except for the one time that we lose gravity and then it doesn't. You can say it happened. On a long enough timeline, bad things happen. There is nothing wrong with saying that until we get more information. But for you to say that this is the government, this is a prelude to war, this is Chinese spy hackers, these are Zionist Jews with their space lasers, all you're doing is just feeding into this narrative of complete bullshit. Period. Period. Okay. What are the comments we got here? Oh, Joshua said something. What did Joshua say? Hold on. People said Joshua, not necessarily. Yeah, I said torpedo. No, people don't understand current momentum. Emma says, oh, this is a good question. Wouldn't the chain be at an angle if it was dropped before it hit? It was straight down and is straight down. That's a really good question. So remember what I said? No, you may not know, Emma, but I'm going to answer this question. Do you remember when I said, and Mel and I were talking about the anchor, what would happen to it if they dropped it? And ultimately, the momentum of the anchor would actually continue to carry once slack was reached in that, and that the momentum of the vessel would not necessarily slow, and it would just drag that anchor with it. That's what we've got. I want you to imagine. I want you to imagine a pendulum, and let's say we have a pendulum that's going like this, right? And at some point, the pendulum goes here and then stops. And then when you reintroduce gravity, it's going to go back to its natural position. Does that make sense? Okay. It's similar to that. At some point, when they drop that anchor straight down, it would continue to look like it's straight down because the anchor hadn't hit bottom. Now, the bottom isn't that far, right? So it's going to go straight down because that's where the momentum of the anchor is going. Once that anchor hits, it's not like immediately that ship feels that pull, because you have a length of give in that anchor. If they dropped full anchor to bottom and it is literally just wide open and that anchor hits bottom and that ship continues to move, what you're going to look at is that it's like a fishing line. It's going to drag out until it catches and stops and reach its limit to what it was supposed to do. Mel can give you more insight into this. But once that anchor hits bottom, there are certain vessels that have a reaction to that, and then the anchor cinches and grabs. But in this situation, you're dragging that anchor. That's what creates drag on the boat, but doesn't necessarily slow it down. The best way I can also describe it is that if, like, do you remember those little things we would sit in and we would do this and then it would go, and then, you know, you could, on your own power, and you'd sit there and you'd sit down in it, put your butt in it, your feet, and you would shift, had roller skate things on it, and that thing would go. And if anyone touched you, you were like, and you'd go off course. I want you to consider that when that anchor dropped at the back end of the ship on the port side, no. Trying to think how it dropped. Mel, help me out. Which was it, backside? Was it port or starboard that it dropped? It was starboard side. Had to be. Yeah? So if it dropped off the back right-hand corner of that, that's when you saw it turn to starboard. Mel, correct me. Let me see what she says, because she'll know. Amy, sure, an anchor could possibly deploy without power, but what shows and stops the wench? Power. Yeah. And that's the other thing. Donald Thompson probably wouldn't have helped. Let me know what Mel, which side? It had to be starboard side, right? Okay, so let me address what Debbie has to ask, okay? Because, okay, first of all, when someone asks me a question, this is me giving you the most probable answer to your problem, okay? Mel's going to tell me which side it was dropped off of, because it doesn't matter. The point is that if I drop something off my back shoulder here that creates drag, I'm going to go like this. If I drop off this back shoulder, I'm going to go like this. Does that make sense? Because what you would see is dropping here, creating drag, is going to make it go like this. And that's what we saw. That, along with the current and the natural movement of those waters, where a ship not under power will drift left and right. It will not stay tap center. Everyone knows that. Like I said, who's put a boat in the water. The moment that that thing lost propulsion and that lost power, starboard by the swing of the ship. Yep, starboard. So it's starboard side. So that's what I'm talking about. And everyone knows if it's not under power, what a ship does when it's in water. It's just left or right, one of the two, depending upon the current. Okay, people are like, okay, Matt, what about the flashes in the video along the bridge? This is the easiest thing to explain. Kevin says, imagine reaching out of your car door and trying to stop your car by dragging your hand on the ground. Yeah. But make sure your hand's made of titanium. Yes, that's exactly what it's like. Make sense? All right, so let's talk about the what people are calling secondary explosions and demolition. Okay. Let me explain to you, first of all. The effort that it would take to bring down a bridge with explosives would be unnecessary because the inertia of the vessel itself was more than adequate to do the job. Why do you need explosives? Why do you need explosives? Why do you need the ship? If you got that thing rigged to detonate, why not just blow it? Does it turn that quickly? Yeah, when it's not under power. Let me ask you a question. This is where, stop. See, I'm crossing streams here. Janine, don't leave. I love that question. That is an amazing question. Does it turn that quickly from an anchor? I'm going to answer that question. But first, let's just, Janine, hold that question. I'm not trying to answer a question with a question. I'm not deflecting. What I'm asking you is, when you have a 150,000 ton metal giant moving at 8 knots out of control with no way to stop, which somehow you predicted was going to happen, and you tested this, how? Where was the dry run done for this, right? Where did this captain practice these things? And if he did practice, don't you think we would know that from the ENAV when he got his harbor rating? Because they all get harbor ratings. It's very similar to landing on an aircraft carrier. You get a rating for how you do, whether you hit the first hook, the fourth hook, second hook, third hook, your approach, your overall level off, your wave off, your touch and goes, all of those things are rated. And aviators deal with that shit every freaking second of the day for every sortie they do. But so do vessels coming into harbors. Captains get ratings. So if he was practicing this, kill the power and drift and slide and all that bullshit, and he was practicing, don't you think someone would have noticed those practices? And where do you do that? You don't do it outside your garage? No. So this was never practiced. So he did all of this just by feel? He calculated all that? No. Okay, so we know that's not true, right? So we know that this guy isn't some sort of savant behind the wheel. We know that things like this take practice to be dead balls accurate. Okay, so let's just say it was an accident. But why would you need explosives if your plan is to run something that ultimately would take 100% of the weight of that bridge and put it on one pylon? Why do you need explosives? To weaken it. It was already weakened. That fucking thing was coming down. So now we have to go ahead and say, all right, let's assume that we're going to go ahead and get explosives on that bridge, okay? We're going to 9/11 this. Okay, fine. So we 9/11 it. Let me explain something. Not only do you have visual from cameras with standard lens, you have FLIR, which check heat signatures at a very high rate. It's very similar to infrared, but it's black and white, and it's fantastic. You do that to look, honestly, for people jumping off the bridge. You look for other vessels and heat signatures, things of that effect, or even biologics, which you can actually pick up with FLIR in some cases. But most of that stuff's going to be done with sonar, and they have that too. But they also have acoustics. They also have radio beacons to listen for distress signals. So they have acoustics there in many different ways to listen. You have witnesses there. You have the call, the distress call. You have the calls being made on the bridge. In any way, shape, or form, did you hear any secondary explosions? Did you hear any auditory explosions? No. Okay, so this is super secret explosive. Okay, so now it's thermite. That's what we're saying. It's thermite. Okay, extremely hot, burns like a welding torch, weakens the. Okay, if thermite the amount of thermite it would take to do that, you're going to see it. And not only are you going to see it from 100 feet away, you're going to see it from a mile away. Okay, when thermite goes off, it looks like a flare. So I want you to be. It's brighter than phosphorus. It is super bright. And it is not realistic, okay? It's not det cord. It wasn't C4. It wasn't Semtex. It wasn't Anfro. It wasn't TNT. It was electrical cables. And I'm not talking little 120. I'm talking giant industrial grade style cables that are designed to house for floodlights, for speakers, to control power on both sides of the bridge, to light the bridge, to have multiple plug-in entries, to do repair, to run welding torches. That whole thing was lit with electrical. And when you see all the entire structure snap, you're seeing also something else, which is actually called friction and smelting. It is such an intense amount of pressure released that there is an immediate smelt that takes place from those ends as they get super heated. This is the same thing we saw with 9/11. Everyone's like, it's thermite. Look at all the molten metal. No, you have incineration. You have fires. They go inside like a furnace. And yes, metal will melt. It may not liquefy, but anybody who has had a fire in an adobe chimney style knows that their metal grate gets red hot. Anybody who knows that metal weakens doesn't need to melt. It just needs to bend in order to lose its structural integrity. I want you to imagine all that energy that bridge felt instantaneously. And I don't want you to watch the high speed video because the high speed video is completely unrealistic. And it's like watching something full speed and then slowing it down. It always looks worse when you slow it down. In this case, it always looks worse when you speed it up because it looks like this is just a deliberate turn and he goes into the pylon and that the bridge just goes. That's not what happened. Watch it in real time and you will see the connective tissue of chain reaction from sweeping out an entire leg of that thing and all weight shifting to that other pylon because the distribution of energy needs to go somewhere. And it's no longer going to that pylon. That's why you see the entire front collapse, all of it, 60% of the bridge, just like grape. And then that energy carries through where you see all those sparks and everything, which is where that metal's being sheared off. Those rivets are popping out. Electrical wires are literally being ripped apart. And that energy has to go somewhere the moment that those cables meet oxidation and get air. That air is going to superheat, that energy is going to transfer, and it's going to turn into a combustible source. It's going to burn the outer remnants of that cable. It's going to actually even ignite the air, which is why you see those type of things. This is why explosions, you can go into pyrotechnics, you can look into these things in combustion, but when you release energy, it's got to go somewhere. And that's what you're seeing. And then you see the back half of it buckle, and then it's done. And the reason why is because the transfer of that energy is like a shockwave. Basically, what would happen is if I punched you as hard as I could in the center of your chest, you're going to feel it in your head and you're going to feel it in your feet. The same exact thing is with that with that pylon going out. It got just belted in the fucking chest by that ship. And the rest of that bridge felt it. That's the one problem with suspension bridges. It's one problem with those engineering designs is that they all feel the same type of energy and it transfers through. If you go ahead and look, Mythbusters did a great a test on this from something Nikola Tesla. And I can't remember, it has to do with reverberation and the way sound works. And all they did is that on the Golden Gate Bridge, they put a small pneumatic device that had a galvanized rubber ball at the end. And all it did was bung, 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 and hit the side in a rhythmic pattern that Tesla had predicted with a certain algorithm at a certain frequency at a certain strike pattern. and that he said he could bring a bridge down. Now, the whole myth was marching troops is you don't march over a bridge because the rhythmic marching will ultimately create this unstable bridge, and then the bridge just goes down. Well, that's the way they're designed. They're designed to take wind, and they're designed to take overall weather and inclement weather and stress, and they all move together. That's what these bridges and these suspension bridges do. That's what they're designed to do. So the Mythbusters put it on there, and no joke, man, Jamie at like 30 minutes in, I don't even know if it was the Golden Gate Bridge. It was some bridge, maybe an abandoned bridge. I don't know. It doesn't matter. And they started feeling it move. And Adam gets freaked out. And he's like, it's like Jamie, and of course Jamie's like, yes. He's like, do you feel that? And Jamie's like, I don't feel anything. This is ridiculous. This isn't working. Blah 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 blah. And Adam's like, just feel the railing, feel the railing. And Jamie walks over. All right, I'll feel the railing. And he's like, oh shit. And they get freaked out because this small little pneumatic device is creating wobble in the bridge, and the frequency that it's moving assists the wave patterns. So it doesn't counteract itself. You have a wave pattern and it hits, and then another signal comes through and it breaks that wave pattern and it dissipates. So it doesn't carry through. But with this rhythmic pattern, it timed itself with a wave. So every time a wave came in, another shock came in and went with that wave. And the wave gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally the bridge comes down. So if you haven't watched Mythbusters, you should do it because it's really cool, and it would help understand the reason why this entire thing fell is because the energy transfer from one end to another is what that bridge is designed to do. It's designed to take it as a whole and distribute energy so one fraction of it doesn't fail, bringing the whole thing down. Unless you drive a 150,000 ton vehicle at 8 knots and displace all of its energy into that bridge, which is why you have catastrophic failure. I'm spent. I'm verklempt. Give me coffee or give me death. Tell me that was a great explanation. Do I get applause or something? I don't get anything for that? That explanation was shit hot. I'm just letting you know that was really good. Like, I convinced myself. Tell me that wasn't the perfect Jamie interpretation. Oh, okay, Adam. All right. So listen, okay. Everything I've said here. Thank you. Thank you for my clap. Thank you. Thank you. Gosh, you guys are freaking hard to please. You're like my wife. Again, honey? God. Here's what it comes down to. I don't have all the answers. I'm gonna use common sense. Right? So what I'm not doing, so you saw it right here today. Every question you asked, I'm like, okay, let's talk about it. And my theory, or my using physics or using basic science or using experiential learning, I'm not an expert. I watch Neil Tyson Degrassi every day. I've watched every episode of Mythbusters at least 10 times. I read endlessly. Cosmos is one of my favorite books in the world. I get bored and I pick up War and Peace. I don't know what to tell you. I was such an idiot for most of my life and so stupid that it's like, I'm just like, I feel like I'm a person who was just released on the world at 22 years age and 22 years of age. And I just discovered drinking and I'm binging. I love to learn. And I've been this way my whole life, except when I wasn't. So you notice everything I did there, I didn't go to conspiracy theory. I addressed your concern. I know what you're asking. You're asking me, Matt, was explosive used? Instead of just saying, Matt, was explosive used? Because that's the question. Next time, just ask that question. Don't say, Matt, what do you think those sparks were on the bridge? You know what people are saying they are. They're saying it's controlled demolition. It's not. It's not. Because that's one thing I have experiential experience in is small explosive and large explosive and incendiary devices. Because I got to see a lot of cool shit get blown up. And I know what it looks like. I've seen enough debt corded door, folks, to know. I've seen enough infrastructure. I've seen enough debt-corded helos to know. I've seen enough debt-corded stuff left over. I've seen enough clearings of saplings to know what it looks like when debt cord goes off. I've seen enough of the entire 285 construction in Deckers, Colorado, where they literally moved 17 miles of rock. Thank you for subscribing, beautiful person who I don't know your name. I'm so sorry. Whoever you are, thank you. I couldn't see it. Thanks for subscribing. I've seen 17 miles at 285, hundreds of thousands of tons of rock be blown apart on the side of that mountain to know what anfro and explosives look like. I've seen thermite. I've seen it used on locks. I've seen it used on the outside of doors that are extremely strong. I've seen it used to take through long bolts that have been seized and rusted shut from being in the desert and then coming to an environment with more humidity and in the expansion and contraction of metals, and seeing those things seized and have to use a thermite torch on that. I don't know what to tell you. There is nothing even remotely close to an explosive on that bridge in any way, shape, or form. And anyone who tells you, they're lying to you. There was a work crew on the bridge, and those are the people who perished. Not all of them, but there was a work crew, and that's the thing, is those bridges are it's 1.5 miles long, y'all. In San Francisco, Golden Gate Bridge, they paint that thing all year round. They start on one end, they go all the way down, and then they go ahead and start on another. And the reason why is the ocean air is unforgiving, and San Francisco sucks balls. But they're constantly working on those things, and they don't work on them during the day. Some do, but most of that stuff's done at night. So there was a work crew there. Now, who asked that amazing question? Was it Janine? Hold on. There's Janine. I remember her. Hold on. Where? Jameen, don't lose my number. Leave the world behind, White Lion. Oh, White Lion. Are you married? Sorry. Does it turn that quickly from an anchor? Okay, so to answer your question, it really depends. It depends on a couple things. One, does it cinch? Because the moment that you transfer the 10 tons, 5 tons, whatever it is of line, I mean, some anchors are, Mel, am I wrong when there's like 50 ton, 45, 35 ton worth of anchor and line out there? Is that an exaggeration? For carriers, I know it's not. But I don't know about commercial shipping vehicles. You would. But either way, let's just say it's 10, 15 tons worth of anchor and line. If you take that and you throw that mass off of a ship, that energy and weight and mass distribution has to go somewhere. That is a lot of potential energy, right? So it would be like, you're standing on a teeter-totter on one side, and I'm on the other, and then I jump off. What's going to happen to you? Right. Or I jump on. Either way, if I jump on or I jump off. If you're on the down position or you're on the up position, I'm on the down position, I jump off. The same thing holds true if I jump on it when you're on the down position, you're going to boom, because that is the energy transfer. Weight versus mass versus current energy to potential energy. So when you take that mass off that ship and you throw it overboard, that's going to have an impact on the ship because the ship's going to get lighter. This is why you saw them throw cannons overboard and silverware and the virgin or the non-virgins, throw them overboard, arr, matey, go, scuttle the ship, get everything off, strip the decks, rape the women, stampede the cattle, whatever, and get that ship completely empty to get more wind, to get more speed. If you watch Pirates, you can see that, but it's actually true. You can also read Blackbeard and other things to get that, but it doesn't matter. The point is that when you transfer the weight of that anchor and distribute it into the water, that transfer of energy is going to have an effect. And especially when it lands, then that energy hits ground, you're going to have a cinching effect that's going to pull on the ship. And that's exactly what it's designed to do. It is designed to stop from inclement weather. It's designed to go ahead and stop the ship from moving and floating and drifting during storms and such, or when it decides to go out of harbor. We parked out of harbor plenty of times on our vessel, and we would have to go ahead and use a small boat and ferry across. But there would be times where we'd have to pick up anchor and go on the other sides of islands because storms were coming in, and use that as a shield, because those anchors will drift. The amount of water moving at the bottom of where anchors essentially adhere to also moves during a storm. And the sediment moves. Everything moves. And those anchors will drift and will move as well. So the answer is yes. You will see, and in fact, if you watch Pirates, there's a point in there where they drop anchor up at the front of the bow or whatever, and the line snaps and the ship goes and turns. No, I don't think from a physics standpoint, from me doing it in my head, that rope, that chain, that whatever they have would be enough to stop a vessel of that size and make it plant and turn. But there are stories that you can read throughout the Spanish galleons and the armadas that they would use an anchor to do quick turns and then cut anchor to get back on course. So I don't know the answer to that question. It looks cool. It sure does. It looks cool. But in this case, we did see something where it turned the ship, and it assisted the process of it already going to starboard side. And it was moving to starboard side. And we know that because of its line of entry and nav coordinates, is that it was on dead center of that bridge. And then once it lost power, it started to drift immediately, which it would. The moment power stops, that boat's going to start to drift. So, but with no power to work the anchor winch right, and all that cable out is going to let the ship drift. Now, that's also something that's very interesting. Mel makes a very good point, okay? Because I want to explain this to you. Drift with a longer anchor, a tether that's longer, like a fishing line. If you look at a line, when you go and you're fishing, and you throw it in the water, and the water tension, and then it drops, the line from your rod to the water, it has a very big dip in it, and it's not straight. But the line that's in the water is straight. Why? Well, there's a couple things. One is refraction. It's an optical illusion. Second thing is that the tension of that hook or that sinker that you have on there keeps that line straight. But if that water starts to move, you will see the more slack that you have in the line, the more that transfers to your bait and hook, and it will pick up and start to sway. This is where you can get into reeds. This is where you can get into algae. This is where you can get into the rocks and lose your hook. The reason I say that is that when you have a ship and you have a straight anchor up and down, the movement of that ship going like this in a tense line is not going to allow for much slippage. But the moment that you go ahead and have that bow, the moment the boat goes like this, it creates slack, right? Then the boat goes like this and it goes taut. Well, that energy has to transfer. So it tries to pull from here, but it can't because it's cinched. So what is it going to do? It's going to pull from that anchor and pick it up. And you're going to creep. And that continues to happen. And that's what Mel's talking about. Can I just say you don't want to play me in Trivial Pursuit? An anchor couldn't have stopped that ship with the undercurrent. There wasn't enough time. I don't know what that means. Oh, yeah, there's no way it was going to stop that ship. I said that in the show. There was not a chance. But it can go ahead and change course. It can alter the way it moves and where it goes because that energy's got to go somewhere. The initial drop and the initial impact will pull on that ship. And when it's not under power, that ship's going to go to the path of least resistance. It's going to pull on its shoulder. So if it's pulling here, it's going to turn it. But it's not going to stop it. There's no way. Mel, how'd you like that? The explanation with the pickup and drift of anchor. Come on, can I get a little love? All right, folks, listen. This is the Don't Unfriend Me show. This is the Don't Unfriend Me AM show, which was a stunning success. Nice to see so many people, a lot of likes, a lot of new people. Janine, did I answer your question? I hope I answered your question. Rebecca says something. Rebecca Lefevers. What a great name. That's a great name. Says, it's hard when your gut, spirit, inner voice, whatever you want to call it, says it's exactly what you think. But then again, anything can be explained away. And that's what builds confusion. It's all a bunch of coincidences that result in the same disaster for the American people. But again, all coincidence. Yeah, listen, you're not. Okay. The difference between this show and other shows is there is nothing that I have said that is 100% perfectly accurate. I've never said those words. We are having a conversation together. We're using practical common sense to have dialogue. We are exchanging ideas from multiple different viewpoints to get to a common agreed upon state. This has been happening in courtrooms since the magistrate. And this is the way from Magna Carta to Greece, to Japanese tribunals, to the Romans, in a little bit more of a violent and completely psychotic way. But this is the way things get decided. This is the way that legislation is formed, should be. This is the way laws are written. This is the way poets begin, and sonnets and plays. And it starts out with an idea, and then people coordinate their thoughts together, and they start to bounce concepts off of each other. So in no way, shape, or form am I saying, like some of these people, like Laura Logan or whatever her name is, who's like, this is the way it is. I promise you, this is a cyber attack, and they're going to kill all of us soon. The government wants to destroy them. No, I don't do that shit. What I do is say, let's talk about that. Let's see if this pans out. Let's really, really take a second. And does this feel like an attack? Are the things that normally associate with an attack taking place? Has anyone taken credit for it? Is the military on high alert? Have they shut down shipping lanes all over the world? Have they went ahead and created more defense in the Suez? Are they looking at the Red Sea? Are they talking to our allied countries and warning them of an imminent attack? Do we have a heightened state of readiness? Are we seeing other entities like Department of Homeland Security getting involved? Are we seeing anything from ATF, DEA? Are we seeing anything from any hostage teams? Or is the FBI getting involved? Is this a local domestic terrorist group, right? None of those agencies are here. This is all NTSB ran at this point. And that's really all I've seen is NTSB. And a FEMA director. Well, FEMA office representatives. And local police. And state troopers. So when we sit here and go, okay, this is a terrorist attack, you can pretty much disprove that very quickly, okay? Because the intel community is not, no matter what Laura Logan or whatever fuck her name is, whatever she's saying, she's full of shit. Nobody is saying that in it. I can't give you any reassurance other than my credibility that I've given for 3.5 years on this show, and the people will tell you, is that I don't lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you. There is nothing on the scuttlebutt. There is not a freaking peep of terrorism when it comes to this at all. None. Zero. I am not, you know what's great is that when people go, he's controlled opposition, there's no way to get out of it. Because if I tell you I'm not controlled opposition, then you think I'm controlled opposition. And if I don't say anything, then it's an admission of guilt. So maybe you should stop fucking being so paranoid, okay? The U.S. government does not have time for my 122-person podcast to sit here and go, this guy, we need to get a hold of him. He's truly making change. No. I'm like the guy that's on the subway who tells you that the end is near, okay? Nobody listens to that guy. And the reason why people don't listen to me is because in the sense that going to 1 million viewers is it's really hard to crack the ice, but I have done exceptionally well for the time that I've been doing this. I'm actually further than a lot of these big names that you see now. And in fact, I rivaled Ben Shapiro's numbers. There was times last year where my site beat his. So does that mean I'm uber successful? Does that mean I'm uber rich? Does that mean that I've made it? No, but this is a lot of hard work. And you have to convince people to get out of their comfort zone and stop believing the bullshit. Do you know how hard the truth is to sell? It is a very difficult thing to sell. It is a very lonely place, being honest about both sides. It's a lonely place to call out Trump once in a while. It's a lonely place to call out Biden once in a while. It's a lonely place to have no loyalty towards politicians. People want cheerleaders. I'm not a cheerleader. I don't believe in it. That's it. So that answers that. Well, Matt, I want it all, so that's just not good enough. Well, that's fair. Cherry says, bingo, Matt, on all those questions you should ask yourself. Most people these days can't think for themselves. They just want to point a finger. Right. Janine says, apparently this will postpone deliveries. It's a logistical nightmare. That's what Laura Logan says. But predominantly, a lot of this stuff was biochemical movements, right? So this bridge was designed for that predominantly, but it has mainly a lot of throughfare traffic for commutal reasons. If you want to get to Eastern Shore, if you want to go over to Baltimore, this is a way for a lot of people in this side of the state in the Delmarva area to get across. It's a throughfare for me. It's something that I've crossed 100 times, 1,000 times. Is it a nightmare? No. Is it going to have implications from a supply chain standpoint? Not really. When you're talking about moving propane, or you're talking about moving crude oil, or you're talking about moving biohazard chemicals, there are other options. Now, she's like, well, you have to go through the tunnel. That's not the only thing you could do. The real big solution is divert the traffic from the bridge and just create a harbor on the east side. That would be a lot easier. And then ships and vessels can load from that side, versus having to go from across and work its way up north and then go onto the western side of the island. Now, that means, is it easier to create a bridge or to create a secondary port of entry for these vessels to come in and offload, and then they can do it on the eastern side? That, to me, seems like a better solution, and then simply ferry it across or build other facilities. That seemed to be faster than a bridge. But honestly, if we do it like Japan does, if we do it like Kuala Lumpur, if we do it like Malaysia and Sumatra, if we do it like Bahrain, we could build this thing in a year. But that would require us to get out of government subsidized contracts, pay a premium, and get it done 10 times as fast and not milk the fucking thing for 5 years. I'll be shocked if this thing's built within 10. Yeah, it's not the only port on the East Coast. I've said that too. This is not the only, I mean, there's people who are in the business of selling you lies because it makes them money. I'm in the business of selling you some shirts and asking for tips and donations. You have to decide if that changes my level of credibility or not. I've said it, and I'll say it 1,000 times. I'll take Donald Trump, who takes money from his supporters and finances things that he wants to get done, versus taking money from Joe Biden, or doing money like Joe Biden, who takes money from Russia and China. So when people say, oh, well, Trump takes money from his supporters, I'm like, good, he should, because those are the people who he wants to have in his network, and we want him to represent us. So if Donald Trump says, hey, man, I need some money, help me out here, because they're, okay, you know what? We can help out. And that's our choice. And nobody's making us. Donald Trump has never forced me to give him money. He didn't take away my severance that I got from the military that was taxed illegally by the U.S. government after 23 years. He didn't come back and say, you haven't given money to my campaign. I want you to give me back the $5,323.36 that we gave back to you without being asked. He hasn't held me hostage for that. Joe Biden's increased my taxes. So when I think about that, do I find value in somebody who gets paid to get you engaged and to get you to keep clicking and to get you to, subscribe to their group, where they don't come and talk to you, or they don't post videos that are special for subscribers, or they don't give you something worth value, but they give you some tchotchke shit made in China? Or do you get to hear from a guy at the beginning of the show and the end of the show who tells you to go buy some shirts and possibly donate if you have the scratch, but always says and undercuts himself, hey, make sure you give to veterans first, or if you can't afford it, go ahead and take care of yourself, put your own oxygen mask on first, which is not what I'm supposed to say, but I do anyway. Does that make me better? I don't know. Yeah, I think. The thing about it is that even if I got syndicated from the largest conservative channel in America, I would simply say my content gets to remain my own. I will not dress or say things that you want me to say that I don't believe in. And if any of those number 1 and 2 are encroached upon, the contract's over. Does that mean I probably will never be syndicated? Yeah, that's what it probably means. And that's okay. I can deal with it. I'm old. I'll be dead soon. Let's see. Yeah, this is a great one. Dottie says, DC responded so quickly, yet took over a year to go to East Palestine. It's an election year, Dottie. And it's also a blue state, very blue, that they have to win, that they must win. So, yeah. Yeah, it's an election year. JD said it. How fast do they get the material removed to get ships back in? They're saying 3 months. You got to understand it's a lot of steel. It's 1.5 miles worth of steel. And you're not going to just put that on dump trucks, right? So you've got to cut it. And you've got to put it on vessels. Then you have to transfer it. Then you have to rebuild the foundation. But first you need to open that shipping lane back up. I think 3 months is probably a reasonable expectation, but to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. Yeah, Amy says the supply chain wouldn't be impacted as much if we had more domestic manufacturing instead of relying on foreign goods. I'll take you one step further. We wouldn't have a supply chain issue if we could actually start getting rid of our own toxic waste and chemicals that are not suitable for soil, right? We need to find a way to stop offloading all of our garbage and learn to process this shit ourselves. Yeah, but you're gonna have to do something. Let Trump build it. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so Rebecca says, DB said the simplest explanation is usually the truth. However, there are a lot of things that cannot be simply explained and believed. Most of the time, it leads to more questions, as it should. I think you're taking me a bit too seriously here. Okay. It will be 5 years to get them to have Lloyd's of London pay the insurance claim. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to this. Is this one of the most critical pieces of infrastructure in the United States? No. Does it create some problems for specifically shipping biochemical and hazardous waste and energy, combustible material? Sure. Yeah, it does. How bad that's going to be? I think we're going to find a solution fairly quickly. What we do need to do is build this bridge with what we learned from this bridge. And we need to make sure that we have the fail-safes in place like we do with the towers, that this can't happen again. Look who owns the cargo ship. Their insurance company and shareholders would be able to cover the damages. So why the taxpayers will pay for it? Government support means taxpayer dollars because it's a federal bridge, I believe. I think that's what it comes down to. And the federal government will go ahead and they're not going to stop. They're not going to wait for a check. If you wait for a check, that thing's never going to get built. So the government's going to float for it, and they'll go back and they'll, depending upon the findings of it, if it was an act of God, the insurance company's not going to pay for it. And that freight company's not going to pay for it. But if there was fault to the captain and mechanical failure or negligence, the federal government will go for its money. But you're paying for it. So either way, you're going to pay for it. You're going to pay for it in shipping costs. You're going to pay for it in overall sales costs, energy costs. You're going to pay for it anyway. So it doesn't matter. That's the great thing about the government. They don't have to pay for shit. All they have to do is go ahead and charge you more. That's what happens. 188,673, folks. That's a pretty good morning. It's been fun talking with you. I think I'm done. article was just released. This will be the show for today. I'll go ahead and cut it. We'll put it out. I hope you had a good time. Please let me know if you have any questions. Do me a favor. This is the time where I go to you and say, hey, I am hoping that if you have the means, you can go to linktapgo/The DUM Show. Amy can go ahead, or one of the other mods can link it to you. And there you can tip to the show. You can donate to the show. What that does, let me be completely honest where it goes, is it goes into the DUM Show LLC, which is sole proprietorship that is owned by me and no one else. I am not funded by any entity. I'm not some government paid shill. I'm not controlled opposition. I'm just a father who did a lot of corporation work as vice presidents for many different companies, Fortune 15s, and did a lot of retail work for most of my career, spent some time in the Navy, and now I do this for full time because I enjoy it, I love it, and I enjoy talking to you guys. So how do we continue to do that? Donations. If you don't want to donate, that's fine. Go get yourself a cool shirt at the Don't Unfriend Me Show. They all look this good. No matter what you look like, what your physique is, you come out looking like this. And especially if you get tattoos and stuff, you'll look like G.I. Joe. Otherwise, you can pick up a hat, you can pick up some coffee, you can pick up the Documents of Freedom. Either way, we appreciate it. All helps keep the lights on. God bless. I will see you tonight at 7 o'clock. Olivia and I will be back on 7 o'clock tonight, and we should have another article to up. You can go to linktapgo/The DUM Show if you want to help us out. Thanks so much for watching, and good day. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
Adjusting transmitter output.
This is the Don't Unfriend Me Show with your hosts, Matt, Leroy, Amy, Olivia, and Mike. Geopolitics, military analysis, and election coverage. Coming to you live on the Spreely.tv network and all major social media channels at The DUM Show. Honest, direct, unfiltered. We can agree, we can disagree. Just don't unfriend me.